The chandelier threw ice across the marble. 1,000 cold eyes, counting everyone who crossed. Harrison tightened his tie until the knot nudged his pulse, the smile on his face glossy as lacquer. A housekeeping cart moved the far edge of the lobby, rubber wheels whispering. The woman behind it kept a shadow, gray uniform, the color of grout. "Get her out of sight," he said into his lapel. Now, radios hissed yes. Sear. Lilies breathed sugar into the air, over the citrus bite of floor polish. Outside, rain slicked the city, so every headlight cut the glass doors like a blade. Harrison posted himself beneath the revolving ring, shoes aligned with a seam in the stone, a man ready to shake the hand that might carry his future in its cuff. The convoy arrived like a decision, black SUVs, doors exhaling, umbrellas opening with precise wrists. Mr. Jiang stepped out in charcoal and red, time measured in the way he didn't hurry. His people ghosted behind him with portfolios and faces that offered nothing. "Mr. Jiang," Harrison said, hand out, voice warm. "Welcome to the Wellington." Jiang nodded once, not unkind. Mandarin unspooled from his entourage. Quick and clean, no space left where an apology could fit. Harrison's smile held a beat too long. He fumbled his phone and called up the app, the little circle spinning as if it could summon competence. "Please," he said, aiming the mic like a prayer. The phone coughed a rubber sentence that bruised every ear. One of Jiang's associates looked down to fix a cuff she'd already fixed. Behind them, the housekeeper pushed past an island of light on the floor, hand steady on the bar. She caught a fragment setbacks, 9th floor, and filed it without meaning to. The cart's metal chilled her palm. They moved as a body through the lobby. Glass watched, elevator doors reflecting them tall and thinner. The framed photographs glossing over history with gold frames. The conference room wall that made every meeting into a fishbowl. Harrison performed the tour like a man charming weather. The spa steamed cedar. The Michelin kitchen sent out scallion, and ginger balanced on a spoon. In the ballroom, rigging hissed down smooth as breath, while Mandarin braided behind them. "Your impressions?" Harrison asked Ms. Lin, the associate with the careful eyes. "He appreciates the architecture," she said in English that left nothing extra. The general manager's shoulders squared, his shoes clicked, his eyes slid, once, to where the housekeeper's cart idled by a column like a small planet. She looked at the ceiling, at a line of dust the lift missed, then lowered her gaze and kept moving as instructed. Invisible is a habit. It has muscle memory. Inside the conference room, light ran cold over the table. A water pitcher sweated. A drip found its way down the glass and paused at the lip like doubt. Harrison launched into slides with the assurance of a man who has memorized the order of his adjectives: market, momentum, opportunity. English filled the room in bullseye phrases. Mandarin filled the corners with details. Jiang asked about vertical zoning allowances on this block. Mixed use. Retail under hotel. 9th floor setback. Shadow impact to the plaza in winter. The window turned the city into a chart, and Harrison's answer softened from confident to vague. He touched his phone again. "Foreign money tree law change. Question important now," the app said, cheerful and insane. Silence rearranged itself. Someone coughed to be kind. Glass absorbed everything and changed nothing. Harrison asked for 5 minutes. He got them. The hallway swallowed him. Executives arrived like weather fronts, finance, salis, security collars sharp, eyes doing math, language vendor, on hold, stack the apps, won't fix terminology. My cousin took Mandarin. He lives in Ohio. 3 minutes slid by, and took dignity with them. In the wall mirror, a man in a navy suit adjusted his hair. Beside him, the housekeeper became two, and then none, as she crossed the pane and vanished in real space. She kept moving. The rag in her hand warmed under her grip. Lemon oil slicked her fingertips. The words from the room threaded through the door like thin wire, abate ordnance retail component. The math assembled in her head with the clean click of teeth. She closed her eyes and saw stairwells and setbacks like cutaway drawings, remembered municipal code numbers the way other people remember birthdays. When she opened her eyes, the glass in the door held her a second too long and let her go. She took the long side of the hallway, so no one would have to step around her. A bellman pushed a cart piled with leather and brass, the smell of rain lifting off it in a dark sweetness. He said nothing. She nodded. She knew his wife's schedule and the name of the good pediatrician 3 blocks over. None of it fit the room where Money learned new grammar. Back inside, the pitch limped. A chef waited with porcelain spoons that cooled by the minute. Ms. Lin translated as little as she could and as much as she had to. Zhang's mouth made a line that wasn't anger, so much as the shape patience takes right before it decides not to return. Reschedule. Harrison tried, words thinning. Tomorrow. With an interpreter. Ms. Lin didn't bother to soften that. Mr. Zhang has 2 other meetings tomorrow. On the street, a bus dragged water into a long gray ribbon. In the room, a pencil tapped once against a legal pad and stopped. The pitcher drip reached the edge and fell. The drop hit the coaster with a sound that registered in no language. Harrison straightened his tie until the knot pressed his throat and walked back into the hallway. Phone to ear, voice pitched low. Any Mandarin at all, he said. Anyone. The housekeeper stood by a molding, cloth folded in a square. Her heart beat against her ribs with the steady, traitorous insistence of someone knocking at the wrong door. She thought of the last job where she'd stepped in to help a Japanese couple and been told later in an empty office to stay in her lane. She thought of student loans that shrugged at shame. She thought of 5 years in Beijing when the library was a second home, and every word cost the same. Time. Glass at the conference room wall caught her again, doubled her, thinned her to a silhouette. Inside, Zhang leaned toward the window, talking not about decor but about district logic, about whether a building can be a bridge. Ms. Lin wrote in a neat hand without looking down. The associates arranged their pens like instruments waiting for a cue. She breathed once through her nose, that small, animal breath you take before you move. The rag cooled in her palm. The cart waited, a familiar weight, a life on wheels. She stepped up to the door and touched the glass with 2 fingers. It was cool, and it held her touch for a heartbeat after she lifted it. "Excuse me," she said. Harrison turned. Relief, flaring, and then confusion, like a match struck in wind. "Not now," he said, palm out. She didn't look at him. She stepped inside. The carpet received her without sound. The chandelier hummed above them like distant ice. She spoke Mandarin that belonged to night trains and lecture hall, to tea steam and contract ink. "Respected sir," she said to Zhang, "I overheard your question about vertical allowances and recent amendments to foreign investment regulations. May I help?" The room went still. Ms. Lin's mouth parted half a centimeter. One of the associates lowered his pen and forgot to catch it. The water pitcher found a new bead. The glass in the wall held all of them, manager and maid, billionaire and translator. A hotel wanting to be something it hadn't practiced and refused to offer anyone a better version. Explain the 9th floor setbacks, Zhang said, testing like a man trying a foothold in a rock face. She laid out the code by number. carve-outs by claws, spoke about winter's sun being a long blade, and the Commission's new love of stepped terraces that gives sky back to the street, brought up a property 3 districts over where a cultural exchange gallery bought 10 extra feet and goodwill that didn't spoil. Harrison lowered his phone. His hand found the back of a chair and stayed there, fingers whitening. The chef set the porcelain spoons down as if they were sleeping animals. Ms. Lynn's pen moved again. Midway through her sentence, the glass stopped being a mirror. It became a door. She finished. The quiet that followed didn't ask for permission. It waited for truth. Zhang's eyes moved to the uniform, returned to her face. He didn't smile. He softened, which is rarer. "How does someone like you push a cart?" he asked in Mandarin, not as an insult, more like a survey question. He trusted. "Scholarship," she said. "Beijing. Libraries. Doors didn't open here." She kept her voice flat so it wouldn't break on remembering. Another drip fell. A bus sighed against the curb. The building held its breath and measured who it was. Harrison cleared his throat. The sound of a man returning to a stage he no longer owned. "Ms. Olivia Thomas," she said. He nodded like he'd known it all along. "We'll discuss your role right after this," he said, voice bright, as if the light could make his sentence warmer. Glass flashed the chandelier across the table in little islands of white. Olivia looked at the rag in her hand, folded it into a smaller square, and set it on the cart. She felt the weight of the room slide, subtle as tide. When she looked up, Zhang was already nodding toward the chair beside him. "Please," he said. "Continue." The cart stood at the threshold, patient as furniture. The door held a faint oval of heat from her fingers and cooled. The chandelier kept counting. The hotel found a new temperature and pretended it had always been this way. Steam lifted from the porcelain cups, thin threads rising and vanishing in the cold conference light. Ms. Lynn shifted her chair half an inch, a small geometry that signaled neutrality, and the glass wall threw everyone back at themselves like a calm accusation. Olivia rested her fingertips on the table edge, pulse steadying where wood met skin, while the rag in her pocket cooled and forgot her heat. "Mixed-use implications?" Zhang asked, eyes on the skyline. Ms. Lynn's pen waited above the page, not yet moving, as if the ink wanted permission more than gravity did. Olivia named the ordinance by number and described how a retail spine buys goodwill from a planning board that likes to imagine pedestrians as citizens again. The words landing without fuss and taking their place like correctly cut tiles. The chandelier hummed. A faraway shill. Harrison's phone face down glowed once, and dimmed like a lighthouse that hadn't decided which coastline it served. The chef set the spoons down and backed away with the reverence you give to a ritual you didn't plan. Zhang pressed further. "Tax structure. Foreign capital last quarter." His voice didn't sharpen. It refined, as if he were testing for hairline cracks rather than swinging a hammer. Olivia traced the shift in federal guidance that favored cultural exchange components and explained the way abatements taper, not fall, and how the taper can be braced by programming that isn't decoration, pretending to be culture. Glass held her reflection and rounded it. The window's cold pushed at her forearms, sleeves taking the temperature like obedient fabric. A drip from the sweating pitcher fell, one precise note, and reassembled silence in a new shape. "Who would run programming?" an associate asked, tapping a neat column of figures. "Museum partners. Universities." The tapping slowed when she laid out a 3-part ladder: Local Arts Council first, then Diaspora Business Association, then a semester rights agreement with the college that sent interns who weren't there to perform authenticity, each rung tied to a measurable calendar and not to a press release. Harrison tried for the reins. If we could, return to revenue projections. His smile came back polished and slightly thinner, and he picked up the clicker like it might bite if he held it wrong. Zhang's gaze didn't move from Olivia, though one eyebrow tipped at the screen as if acknowledging a dog trying to jump at the window without smudging it. The app on Harrison's phone lit again, then went still. The room did an odd thing. It relaxed and tightened in the same breath, a muscle that had learned two tricks at once. Olivia kept her eyes on the numbers when she answered, but her voice carried the shape of rooms where people drink tea because it is the point and not because a camera wants them to. Payment systems, Zhang asked, casual as a hand in a pocket. Ms. Lin translated the question for anyone who needed the English to feel included. A kindness disguised as bureaucracy. Olivia didn't look at the front desk manager to say WeChat Pay and Alipay integration by quarter's end. PCI compliance squared away. Chargeback risk modeled against higher capture. And the manager sat up straighter like someone who'd been recognized by a sound more than a name. Midway through, the glass changed meanings. It stopped being a mirror and became a proof. Outside, the avenue's winter glare softened a shade, and tighter shadows drew clear lines across the carpet, like rulers left by a careful child. The spoon on the side plate cooled to the exact temperature of the room, a small object that had chosen a side. Your background, Zhang said, and the room took the question like a bead of light, landing in a lens. Harrison began to answer, and caught himself, the correction small enough to miss if you weren't watching his mouth. Beijing University, Olivia said, and let the rest be a fact rather than a plea. 5 years. Language immersed until it was a room she could walk around without hitting her shins. A thesis that took hotel lobbies apart and put them back together as if they were sentences. Unusual, he said. The word wasn't a compliment. It was a measurement. She nodded once and left the story where it belonged, in the bones and not in the air, while the rag in her pocket pressed a cold square against her thigh, like a reminder not to mistake survival for a personality. Harrison exhaled as if rescued, and then realized he hadn't been. We should proceed to the deck, he said, voice pitched to the ceiling. He swept his hand toward the screen where a bar chart waited like a dog trained to shake, and the bars looked taller now in the dimmer respect that had entered the room. Later, Zhang said gently. He turned a page in his leather folio and revealed a neat grid, the lines hand-drawn. 2 boxes already shaded in with the soft gray of decisions not yet public. Local zoning board dynamics, he added, and the air temperature seemed to drop the 1 degree that exposes insincerity. Olivia explained the chair's appetite for activation and the way the vice chair distrusted anything that sounded like a party. She mapped the last 3 approvals, 6 denials, 2 deferrals, and laid them next to the seasons as if weather could vote, and sometimes did. And she named the coffee order of the planner, who wrote the memos that put verbs where verbs do the most work. A quiet beat cleared the room. No one moved. Even the screen paused its faint internal fan. In the glass, Harrison's eyes found a version of himself he didn't want to memorize and looked away. Ms. Lin's pen made a soft sound. Ink, finally choosing paper. Tea, Zhang said after that pause. Almost a request, almost a test. The chef rolled the trolley forward, its brass fittings warm to the touch. A thin seam of steam holding steady beneath the kettle, spout like a thread. Olivia set a cup before him the way her hands remembered from another country handle angle. Lil tilt, pour arc, and the smell rose, clean and grassy, with a mineral back note. Not for Instagram, she said, For the grandmother who will judge if the hotel belongs in her stories, the chef smiled, involuntary and quick, the expression of a man who'd just been understood by someone not on his team. Pre-climax breath came when Ms. Lin looked up and held Olivia's gaze a fraction longer than translation required. It was nothing. It was also a ledger entry. Witness acquired. In that breath, the room recalculated where the weight sat, and Harrison put the clicker down like he'd been holding it by accident. Zhang reached into his jacket and removed a black card with beveled edges, the gold letters cutting ceiling light into neat, sharp strips. He placed it on the table with both hands, the motion steady, a ritual more than a gesture, and the card shone briefly like a small piece of machinery designed for a specific task. "My private line," he said in Mandarin. His voice had softened without losing its shape. "Arare physics. In case you prefer a door that remembers you on both sides." Harrison twitched a smile that didn't find a face to live in. He started, but Zhang continued as if someone had gently lowered a fader on a channel that had been too loud for too long. "We will tour once more," Zhang said, standing. "Then we will talk contracts, not slides." His eyes went to Olivia, then to the window, then back, the triangle drawn with a pencil that didn't smudge. They moved as a new body through the corridors. Carpet gave underfoot with that expensive give that makes shoes quiet, and the air in the spa held eucalyptus like a password. In the elevator, the mirrored walls stacked them into an army of possibilities, and then, mercifully, let them collapse into one honest group. When the doors opened to 10, he stopped outside a suite and faced the city through glass that remembered hands. "Families," he said, chin toward the skyline. "Privacy. Yet together, elders before sons." Olivia described sliding partitions, tea stations that work, charging ports where people actually sit, and the bell captain waiting at the threshold with practiced neutrality let his body show the half-second of relief that comes when language finally puts furniture where it should be. Down again, back to the cool light. The card lay on the table where she'd left it, a small weight bending the paper beneath. Harrison stood at the head of the room with the expression of a man who had decided to call a draw in a game he had been losing by several points. "We'll schedule a debrief," he said, "and discuss Ms. Thomas's position." "Discuss nothing," Zhang said lightly, "only decide." He turned to Olivia. "Your presence changed the room. Rooms don't forgive lies for long. This one won't forget you." He nodded once, to Ms. Lin, to the table, to the glass that had behaved all morning like a conscience. Closing echo. Her fingers touched the card, and the bevel found the soft part of her thumb, a small bite that felt like clarity. The chandelier hummed its clean, cold sound, counting something only it understood, and the glass wall returned everyone to themselves, without commentary as the door sighed shut behind them. Outside, the winter light held, a little warmer by 2 degrees that no one in the street would name but everyone would feel. The boardroom glass looked like water that forgot how to move. It threw the skyline back at itself and kept everyone edged. The carpet had that expensive hush that eats footsteps, and the long table wore wood, the color of old bourbon, heavy, inevitable, indifferent. Harrison took the window like a claim. He liked a backdrop. He smoothed his tie as directors filed in, the bowl of green apples on the credenza, pretending someone might be healthy today. Olivia sat 2 seats down with a legal pad and a pen that felt heavier than its ink. The chandelier above wasn't crystal, just frosted discs, but it hummed like the others, cool, patient, counting. "Thank you all," the chair said. "Let's hear about the pilot." Harrison clicked the deck alive. He'd chosen the kind of font you can't argue with. "Hidden talents. A Wellington initiative," he said, voice polished to a hotel finish. He spoke in layered wheeze. We recognized an opportunity. We ideated a culture-forward program. We aligned incentives with global expectations. The slides showed uniforms cropped at collarbone and wrist, a quiet trick that made workers into gestures. Outcomes to date, he said, and the graph rose obediently. Guest satisfaction up 3 points among key segments. Early WeChat Pay adoption. Cross-departmental buy-in. Olivia watched the glass. It held him in replication. Thinner. Nicer. Almost true. She wrote names on her pad. Emma. Teferi. Miguel. Juno. No bullets. Just the people who had made the line move, and the light warmer by 2 degrees. Questions. The chair asked. She wore her hair the color of metal, the kind that refuses scratches. Finance wanted stipend math. Legal wanted classification. A donor director wanted narrative. Harrison answered like a man running a hand underwater, smooth, quick, leaving no ripples you could bill him for. He reached for the slide titled Roadmap and lifted his chin by a practiced inch. Ms. Thomas, the chair said, turning, origin and mechanic. Please. Olivia stood. The table took the shift like a patient animal. We built a system after we hit a wall, she said. Survey. Intake. Committee with cross-department authority. Budget line that survives daylight. Training hours that cost real hours. Stipends for language used, logged and paid. Her slide was 3 columns. Na flourish. Language use. Cross-training. Inventory retrofit. Under each, dates and names in small letters that demanded squinting, the only trick she allowed herself. She spoke without apology. Amharic, at the desk, 2 evenings a week. ASL. Shadowing concierge. Tea service, retrained to ritual. Not Instagram. Partitions on 10. Rehung to slide without complaint. Glass shifted. It stopped flattering and started recording. Midpoint. The chandelier's hum found a higher note. Barely there, like a string drawn tighter. A director asked who saw it first. Housekeeping, she said. People already in the room. The answer landed with a soft thud. Not righteous, just true. Harrison's mouth moved like he might correct her to our housekeeping and then thought better of it. We'll keep the presentation tight, he said, recovering tone. Donors respond to vision. Vision needs bolts, Olivia said. Not unkind. We're showing where they sit. A quiet beat followed. The best kind. No one fidgeted. The HVAC breathed like a sleeping thing, and the apples didn't dare fall. The chair's pen made 1 note and stopped. The glass door sighed open. Ms. Lynn slipped in and took a seat in the back. A small nod that meant witness. She crossed 1 ankle over the other, set her folio flat, and gave the room a face that told nothing and saw everything. Harrison clocked her and smoothed his tie again. Twice this time. Payment systems, the donor director said. Risk. Compliant, Olivia said. Chargebacks modeled versus capture. Net positive. Staff trained to ask for the QR code before receipt printing. Fewer awkward pauses at the desk. Zoning board dynamics. The chair added, you understand we can't afford to look foolish again. We'll bring a plan the board likes to approve, Olivia said. Activation by calendar, not vibe. Local partners named by quarter. 1 clause for cultural exchange that isn't decorative language. Harrison cleared his throat, like a man moving furniture alone. We can over-index on operations, he said. This is also a values story. Values are the invoice we pay, Olivia said. Operations keep the lights on. He smiled. Thin. We'll agree to disagree on phrasing. You can, she said. The clauses won't. The chair's mouth did something small and pleased. There and gone. Deliverables. Publish the stipend schedule. Olivia said, tie part of management incentive to sustained language coverage. Blind review promotions. Quarterly report with names attached to outcomes. If we backslide, it makes a sound you can hear. In the glass, Harrison's reflection reached for the clicker again and set it down. He adjusted the distance between him and the screen, as if he could choreograph how close truth was allowed to stand. The chandelier lifted a fraction, a pre-climax breath that tasted like cold metal. Last item. The chair said, credit allocation. Harrison's smile brightened. The rehearsal showing, we're proud. Names. Olivia said, gentle. Before the sentence could expand, she read them. Emma, who co-chaired, and turned a clipboard into a key. Teferi from maintenance, who tuned light to skin. Miguel in kitchen, who taught water to behave. Juno at the desk, who turned a payment into respect and didn't ask for a thank you. She did not say her own name. She didn't need to. Noted, the chair said. She closed her folio with a sound like a stamp. We expect a quarterly update with this level of detail. Keep the wheeze accurate. The room released itself. Chairs scraped. The apples survived uneaten. Harrison hovered at the end of the table, smile in place, hand extended like a lifeline he'd throw to a person drowning him. Incredible alignment, he said to Olivia. Low. Say it with me. We delivered. You protected your version, she said. I protected the work. He lowered his voice further. You know how this town works? Be political. The program survives if you help me sell it. She looked at the glass, not at him. It survives if we write it into paper. Paper bends, he said. Then bolts, she said. We'll hear when they loosen. He held the smile until his jaw complained. You could have given me the right to tell this story. I gave you the chance to tell it true, she said. He blinked. The chandelier hummed like a blade cooling in a trough. The corridor outside ran cooler. The carpet swallowed the part where anger turns to noise. Ms. Lynn stepped beside Olivia, gait matching without comment. Careful with the piece that looks like agreement, she said. It's usually fatigue. I have a year, Olivia said. You have as long as the paper remembers ink, Ms. Lynn said, and a memory longer than that. They paused at the glass rail that overlooked the lobby. Below, lilies brightened the air with something like sugar. The marble held its cold perfectly, reflecting a bell cart like a brass animal migrating. A housekeeper crossed between columns and didn't shrink, shoulders square, hand steady on the handle where dignity lives most days. What do you see? Ms. Lynn asked. Edges getting softer, Olivia said. Not dull, just kinder. 2 degrees, Ms. Lynn said. 2 degrees, Olivia repeated. She went back to her office and set the legal pad down. The black card lay under the paperweight, bevel, biting the paper like a small memory of teeth. She lifted the glass and touched the card's edge, a private ritual without time for superstition. She typed an email. Stipend schedule public posting draft. Committee charter blind review clause. Metric map guest satisfaction by surname and payment type. She didn't copy people who didn't need to be copied. She CC'd finance because math is the only story some rooms read. Her phone buzzed. A photo from Emma. The yellow carbon tucked in a drawer beside a red thread spool and a travel sewing kit. Under it, one line rescinded, and a period that looked like a nailhead. Olivia exhaled through her nose. The quiet beat filled the room. HVAC, a steady breath. The city pressing its face to the window like a curious child. Donors at 4. Harrison wrote, Calendar. Invite. No subject. No please. Just the corporate voice that thinks politeness is inefficient. She deleted it and sent back. I'll join for 10 minutes with outcomes. No adjectives. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji that felt like a man shrugging in a hallway he didn't mop. The afternoon wore itself down to a softer light, 2 degrees warmer in the lobby. If you knew where to look, on 10, a carpenter shaved a casing by a whisper and got the partition to run smooth. At the desk, Juno switched a payment screen to Mandarin without announcing it. Someone breathed easier because the screen met them halfway. Pre-closing, she adjusted the sign characters aligned to their English twins, fonts married, not copied. She stood back and watched the glass doors throw the city onto marble and back again. Everything doubled and reduced. The chandelier's hum moved 1 note lower, the sound a room makes when it decides to be itself after a day of performance. She finished the email to the chair, deliverables attached, names included, bolts visible. She didn't add flourish. She didn't ask for praise. She closed the laptop and left the black card under glass. On her way out, she touched the lobby door with her palm, a habit that was starting to feel like a vow. Cold met skin. Glass remembered. The city beyond looked like a reflection trying to become something solid. She stepped through without hurry, the revolving ring catching and carrying her, the hum of the chandelier fading to a patient, measured count. Glass held the morning like a breath, pale light, trapped between pain and air. The HR office smelled of toner and a ficus that had learned to live on fluorescent sun, leaves dusty at the edges. Emma read the form, lips pressed thin, pen steady, as she signed a line that felt like a bruise written down. Just procedural, the HR rep said, voice padded. He didn't meet her eyes. It's optics, she said, folding the yellow carbon into her pocket like a stitch. You promise won't show. The carpet underfoot offered that corporate hush. Somewhere, a stapler clicked like a distant metronome. On the way out, she paused at the glass door and watched her reflection waver under the air conditioning vent, then set her shoulders and pushed through, down the corridor. The building's hum thickened the elevator's low moan. Vacuum wheels, whispering, coffee grinding behind a wall. The lobby gave off lilies over lemon oil, a sweetness cut by the citric bite of clean. Olivia waited on the mezzanine, where the balustrade glass turned the floor below into a flattened reel. Shifting as people crossed, she took the right up, Emma said, eyes dry, fingers worrying the carbon's edge, until tiny paper curls fell like confetti. They wanted invisibility in a memo. Olivia watched the chandelier throw ice scatter onto marble. She could feel the chill radiate across the atrium. 2 degrees at war with warmth, counting people who forgot to breathe. She took the carbon copy, read the phrases meant to sound neutral, then slid it back and nodded once. Meet me upstairs, she said. I need a promise made aloud. Harrison's office liked its view too much. The skyline leaned in the glass behind him, a mural of compliance. He used like a suit. He turned when they entered, smoothing his tie. The citrus in the air here came from polish, not fruit. Emma's taken a write-up for doing her job, Olivia said. Her voice stayed even, but the words had edges. You'll rescind it today. We'll build a policy that keeps workers from being erased because a guest might see them. Harrison blinked, then reached for civility. We have standards, he said. Guests don't need. They need reality, she said. They need the illusion without the lie. Glass caught his face in profile, a man lit well. He lifted a hand as if he might shape the air to fit his point again. We're aligned on intention, say I, she said. Not we. Silence settled on the carpet, dense and obedient. He swallowed. He didn't like the word and said it anyway. I'll rescind it, he said. I'll authorize language stipends and cross-training hours. You'll run point. Will he corrected? I'll present it. Present the names, she said, not the weather. He nodded, and the gesture looked like a man agreeing with himself in a mirror. He trusted too much. The window brightened as a cloud moved. The room's temperature changed by a sliver you could feel in your cheeks. Outside, the service hall breathed bleach and metal. On a corkboard beside the time clock, a crooked thumbtack held a faded Christmas potluck flyer. Olivia pinned up a new sheet. Language, stipends, schedule, and rates in plain type. Numbers that didn't blink. The kind of math that turns rumor into law. Is this for real? Teferi from maintenance asked, hands still smelling faintly of WD-40. Or the kind we get in meeting. For real, she said. Log your hours. Don't gift the hotel fluency for free. He grinned, a tight crescent that warmed as he read the figures. Finally getting paid to have a mother. Tell her she's on payroll, Olivia said, and the joke landed, dry and true, a small relief valve turning. At noon, they gathered in the conference room, gray, white, blue, charcoal uniforms around a table that had never looked so alive. Steam rose from paper cups. Someone had brought sesame buns and set them where the apples usually went to be ignored. The glass wall watched without comment. A flat witness with perfect recall. Committee structure, Olivia said, ticking items with a pen. Blind review for promotions. Cross-department seats. Protected training hours. Outcomes with names. Emma laid a folder on the table and fanned out surveys. Ink smudges in corners where hands had pressed too hard. Juno, from the desk, spoke about payment screens, translating more than language dignity rising, when someone didn't have to ask for the right word. Miguel from kitchen held up a T-chart he'd drawn in pencil, water temperature and leaf weight, scribbled notes about the older woman who had taught him to listen to steam. Not Instagram tea, he said, grandmother tea. Midpoint. The glass changed from wall to mirror and back. Outside, winter sun flashed off a bus roof. Inside, the chandelier hummed like a cold hive. The spoon on a saucer cooled to the room's temperature and became, in its small way, proof that things can be coaxed to meet. After lunch, an email arrived with a subject line that chirped like a toy employee experience integration, and a body that read like a future obit, consolidate program, fold hidden talents into HR, sunset stipends to centralize recognition, leverage storytelling in lieu of. It trailed off into the kind of cheer that treats people like decor. Emma printed it and brought it to the maintenance shop. The room smelled of hot dust and wood. A radio whispered an old pop song. Through static, she tacked the memo to the corkboard and uncapped a thick marker. Not this time, she wrote at the bottom. The letters bled slightly into the paper. Soft edges, like a bruise healing. Sign if you want them to hear it. Names began to stack in ink block letters. Tidy cursive. Looping scripts from other alphabets. Hans hesitated, then wrote. A mechanic drew a small wrench beside his name. A housekeeper drew a teacup with steam. Juno signed and added, "Don't photograph the trolley, photograph the hand." Olivia stood back and watched the board blacken with resolve. Quiet took a chair in the corner and sat with them, not heavy, not light, just present. The fluorescent tubes hummed. A drill whirred and stopped. Somewhere far away, the elevator sighed. She carried a copy of the memo upstairs and set it on the boardroom table in front of Harrison. "This is already drafted," she said. "Someone upstream wants our people to be adjectives again." He read, jaw flexing. "It's exploratory. It's a test balloon," she said. "Pop it before it learns to float." He looked at the glass at himself. Smaller, funtier, true in a way he didn't enjoy. I can slow it, he said. Not kill it. Then we codify, she said. We write the stipends into an addendum. We tie bonuses to language coverage. We publish credit lists. We make backsliding audible. He rubbed a temple with 2 fingers, as if he could massage a better sentence into the memo by thought alone. You make it sound like law. It is, she said. The building needs rules, not vibes. Pre-climax breath. Ms. Lynn stopped by late afternoon. Hair damp from rain, coat shedding droplets that spotted the table and vanished. She read the memo, the stipend sheet. The committee charter flipped open to its blind review clause. Her mouth made a half smile that respected nothing, and everyone at once, good, she said, tapping the clause with 1 nail, names attached to work, not just mistakes. How's your watch? Olivia asked, glancing at the timepiece that always lived 5 minutes ahead. Still rude. Ms. Lynn said, still right. She looked at the glass wall, at their reflections layered over the gray outside. Remember, fatigue looks like consensus. If you don't stare it down, that evening, the lobby put on its warm face. Lamps threw buttery cones onto chairs. The air smelled like gin and citrus. A pianist inched through a standard with enough restraint to keep the ice from cracking. A junior manager reached for a housekeeper's cart, hand hovering. Helpfulness freighted with ownership. Do you need assistance? Olivia asked the housekeeper first. The woman shook her head, shoulders lifting and settling. The manager's hand backed away, fingers open, palm empty. A boy learning heat. Just helping, he said, green apologetic. You did, she said, by stopping, upstairs. She wrote the addendum title in a subject line that would travel well. Operating Agreement Staff Language Compensation and Cross-Department Authority Addendum A. She attached drafts, copie légale, T finance, left marketing off because stories would follow paper, not lead it. Her fingers paused above the keyboard during the last clause, publish stipend schedules quarterly. Require board acknowledgement with signatures. Any rollback triggers a vote. She sent it. The whoosh sounded small in the room and enormous in her ribs. On her desk, the black card lay under the paperweight, bevel catching lamplight, a sliver bright edge, like a thought you can't unthink. She slid it out, felt its weight, then set it back and slid an index card beneath the glass with a note in tidy letters. No more ghosts. Closing echo. She walked the mezzanine and put a palm flat to the balustrade. The glass was cool, and it remembered, below, a bell cart rolled. Marble turned it to a brass line moving through a field of light. The chandelier hummed, counting a different number now. Not bodies, not dollars, but something like beats until paper becomes habit. She stood there long enough to feel the 2 degrees tip toward warm. Then she let her hand fall, turned, and went to meet a building that finally wanted to learn the truth about itself. Rain threaded the morning into one fabric, glass and street stitched into a gray sheet. The revolving door breathed cool on her wrists as she crossed the lobby, the chandelier throwing cold coins across the marble. On her desk upstairs, the black card slept under glass, bevel, catching a seam of light like a knife. A patient hand keeps sheathed. He arrived without ceremony. A charcoal coat, an umbrella that held its water like a secret. Ms. Lynn walked half a step behind, watch ahead of the hour as always. They sat at the corner table where the window made the city flatten and flare with each passing bus. Tea unfurled steam in clean lines. The trolley's brass fittings were warm under the skin. A new habit already learned. Status, Zhang said in Mandarin, eyes doing a slow inventory of the room he had helped tilt by 2 degrees. We put names on bolts, Olivia said. Stipend posted. Hours protected. Committee with authority on paper. Paper, he repeated, as if tasting material. He set a folder between them. Heavy. Black. No logo. Advisory partnership. He said. 1 year. I lend you our name. You report outcome. No press without consent. No ownership. Keys. Not a cage. She held the folder closed. Outside, a taxi's brake hiss made a white line on her nerves. I won't leave now, she said. Not yet. If I go, it stays a story. I want a system that breathes without me. Unusual, he said, not as judgment, more like a survey finding. Fragile things like people, she said. Durable things like rules. Midpoint. The tea steadied into a thread-thin pour. Ms. Lynn's mouth tilted. Constraints will be different than the ones you've survived, she said, and placed a pen on the folder with a calm that made signatures feel like the natural end of breath. They wrote it there, the rain softening everything beyond the glass, a memorandum with clauses that read like bolts, quarterly outcomes tied to names, stipend integrity not to be migrated to recognition. Committee authority acknowledged in the operating agreement. Cutbacks requiring a vote. Signature visible. Zhang signed first, his name compact and decisive. Olivia signed last, and the paper remembered. Spend your year like an argument you intend to win, he said, rising. Arguments need listeners, she said. We will listen, he said. We will not applaud until the numbers tell us where to place our hands. The city led up to a mist. On 10, drywall dust made the air taste like chalk. A carpenter traced a cut with 2 knuckles before lifting the saw, measuring with the part of the hand that remembers. Emma stood with a tape around her neck, pencil behind one ear, eyes gone sharp at the partition track that wanted to wander. Short by a finger, she said. Shave the casing, Olivia said. Keep the sightline. Grandmother should see the window from the chair. Teferi tilted a sconce until the Kelvin read warm, neutral, 2 degrees, he said. Skin stops fighting marble. Invoice poetry, Emma said, and the laugh lifted the dust for a second. They moved like a small crew through rooms that had pretended to need nothing. The tea cart learned a circuit that made sense. Water, leaves, cups, cloth. Miguel pinned a chart above the kettle weights, bloom times. A column labeled listening and told 2 new hires to stop pouring when the steam changed its voice. Downstairs, Juno flipped payment screens to Mandarin before the guest had to ask, and the guest's shoulders dropped in the way that makes the lobby's air feel usable. Finance gathered in the small conference room that always smelled faintly of stale binder clips. The analyst set up a spreadsheet that looked like an aerial photo of fields. Stipends sit here, she said, tapping the green block. Guest satisfaction against language coverage tracks here. Net benefit over 4 quarters averages out to this. The number wasn't fireworks. It was a knuckle-rapping wood that holds, publish the stipend figures, Olivia said. A reward is only justice when it's visible. The analyst winced in a way that meant she'd spend a week in reply. All hell. We will be asked to explain. We should get good at explaining, Olivia said. We already pay the cost of confusion. In marketing, a soft light box made objects absurdly sincere. A photographer aimed at the trolley, the cups like tiny moons. Hands, Olivia said. Not props. Hands. The photographer repeated and reframed. Forearms with tea stains. Nails short from work. A scar shaped like a comma. When he looked up, he smiled like a man whose picture had finally found a subject. It'll get fewer likes, he said. It'll get the right ones, she said. The owner's man wore a suit that didn't need sunlight. He flipped through the addendum with 2 fingers like he was testing cloth. "A year is as far as we can go," he said. "We need flexibility." "Flexibility is a broom," she said. "We can sweep people under it." "We won't," he said, which is not the same as can't. "Then string a wire," she said. "Tie management incentive to language coverage. Publish the report monthly." He considered a window that showed him money in a skyline. "We can live with that," he said, and the sentence produced a sound like a bolt catching. Pre-climax breath. An email with a bright subject, storytelling synergies, bounced into her inbox. A draft campaign full of adjectives that loved the idea of people more than the people. She printed it, slid it into a folder with the advisory memorandum, and carried both to the maintenance shop where noise humbled paper. Emma read the campaign lines and made a sound in her throat, like someone deciding against breaking something. "Not this time," Emma said, and wrote it again on the cork board. Darker. The board held 2 rains at once. The cheerful drizzle of marketing and the weather of the room where things are built, and the signatures thickened under the words until the paper had weight. Ms. Lynn stood at the mezzanine rail that evening, coat unbuttoned, hair carrying a few drops like punctuation. "Fatigue," she said, as if continuing a conversation from the morning. "It dresses as consensus. Don't compliment its outfit. I'll make backsliding audible," Olivia said. "When they try, it makes a sound. Good." "Ms. Lynn said, "Buy earplugs." In the lobby, a junior manager hovered again over a cart. Olivia crossed, her steps a soft metronome. "Need help?" she asked the housekeeper first. "No," the woman said, moving the bucket handle a millimeter to stop the clank. The manager stepped back, palms open like a magician, proving nothing up his sleeves. "Helping is mostly stopping," Olivia said, and even he let the corner of his mouth go. She walked the line between elevator and sign, touched the glass with a flat palm the way she'd started to do when choices needed a surface. The pain was cool. It remembered. She went up to her office and slid the black card out from under the paperweight. The bevel bit the soft part of her thumb, a sting that was clarity more than pain. She put it back and tucked an index card under the glass. Make it boring. She believed in boredom, the way some people believed in saints. The night porter vacuumed a slow circle beneath the chandelier. The machine's whine thinned at the edges when it passed over a crack in the grout. On 10, the new partition rolled end to end without complaint. In the service corridor, a sign in 3 languages asked people to use the other sink today, while this one learned how to be useful. She sat a while without the lamp, letting the city write itself on her window, red smeared into the gloss, a blue sign blinking like a tired eye, white headlights stitching thin lines up the avenue. The building breathed in long pulls, vents shouldering air through ducts, like a patient animal that had finally found a rhythm. The year on paper weighed less than the year in her body. She held both, one in each hand, and let them balance like bowls you carry so they don't knock together. Before leaving, she walked through the lobby once more. A family stood in front of the sign, the grandmother's hand anchored on a child's shoulder. The mother, looking at the characters, lips moving. The concierge looked up, switched language without saying a word, and the grandmother's face altered, not surprised, not grateful, rested. Olivia stood under the chandelier until her eyes stung. Light fractured, reassembled, chose the marble. 2 degrees of warmth lived in the corners now, exact and earned. She palmed the door glass and stepped into the revolving ring, her reflection bending and returning. The city outside a mirror that had finally remembered to show what was real. The email arrived before the lilies, a bright subject line chirping in the blue light of 6:12 a. M. Phi 25 alignment. It smiled as it cut. Consolidate programs. Fold language stipends into employee experience. Sunset. Duplicative recognitions. Leverage storytelling. Olivia read it in the half-dark with the kettle ticking on the desk. Steam fogging the window just enough to make the city soften. The glass cooled her fingertips when she leaned in. She read it again and heard the sentence inside the sentences. We like the photo. We don't like the cost. She forwarded the note to 3 people: Emma, finance, legal with 9 a.m., and nothing else. Then she slid the advisory memorandum out from under the paperweight, the black square of Jiang's card flashing once like a small knife beneath the glass. By 9, the small conference room held shoes that could take stairs, housekeeping gray, kitchen white, maintenance blue, front desk charcoal. The air smelled of coffee and floor wax. Steam riding the fluorescent hum, Olivia taped the email to the screen and let it stare back. I won't read it, she said. You already did. A low sound threaded the table. Not outrage, its slower cousin. The finance analyst clicked her remote. Slides came up. Stipend, cost, next to guest satisfaction among Mandarin surnames. Repeat bookings by multi-generational party size. Average check lift in tea service when the water behaved. Numbers didn't glow. They held. They want the trolley's photo, Emma said, tapping the email with 2 knuckles. Not the hands that push it. Then we make the hands expensive to ignore. Olivia said, paper, not vibes. A quiet beat arrived and took a chair. The room inhaled together. Chairs creaked. A spoon settled. Someone's phone vibrated and then thought better of it. At 11, the owner's representative took the end seat in the big boardroom. A suit that had learned to look tolerant, the chair joined by screen, a rectangle of calm, marketing perched near the glass with adjectives on the tip of her tongue. Legal's pad waited, margin ready for clauses. We love this work, the owner's man said first, the way men say love when cost is nearby. You love what it buys you, Olivia said. Say that. It's cleaner, he smiled. The window behind him flattered the smile and thinned it. We need to streamline. Guests care about not tripping over our lies, she said. Let's skip to where this goes. You'll fold stipends into recognition. You'll keep the story and sunset the pay. That's the plan. Silence drew its shoulders up for a second and then relaxed. The chair on the screen steepled her fingers. What do you want? An addendum to the operating agreement. Olivia said 3 things. 1. Stipends codified and published quarterly. 2. Cross-department committee authority recognized in writing. Blind review for promotions. 3. Management incentive tied to sustained language coverage across peak hours. Forever, the owner's man said, making forever sound like a tantrum. A year, she said. On paper, doors, not brooms. He glanced toward the glass as if the skyline might consult. A year is possible. Tie incentives lightly. Tie them where it hurts, Olivia said. Otherwise, it's decoration. Legal lifted a pen, eyes brightening at a fight that could be diagrammed. Drafting language, she said. Midpoint. The chandelier over the big table hummed a fraction louder, crystal catching noon and breaking it into small, indifferent fires. The room cooled by a feeling, not a thermostat. Harrison wasn't at the table out with donors, but the carpet still carried the ghost of his stride. We'll need proof this isn't just nice, the owner's man said. Finance slid a packet across the wood. 4 quarters, she said. Net revenue versus stipend line. If you cut it, the room gets colder by more than 2 degrees. 2 degrees, the chair repeated, amused. Everyone keeps saying that number. It's the difference between posing and belonging, Emma said from the back. You can smell it. The owner's man read until reading became deciding. A year, he said. On paper, Olivia repeated. And public, he nodded slowly. The kind of nod men give when they think they invented compromise. Public. By 2, the draft addendum lived in her inbox. Clauses clicked. Stipend schedule visible. Committee authority enumerated. Blind review described in language that disliked loopholes. A line tying 10% of management incentive to language coverage during defined peaks. If coverage slipped 2 months running, a report printed on actual paper demanded signatures that could be photographed, bolds, not wishes, pre-climax breath. An internal concept deck leaked a campaign with a soft font and a weaker spine. The Wellington. Stories of belonging. Photos of trolley wheels and soft hands. Captions about our family written by someone who didn't know anybody's kids. The deck used the word legacy the way a person uses a napkin to hide a stain. Olivia printed it and took it to the maintenance shop. The room was hot with machines cooling down. The air tasted like metal filings. She tacked the deck beside the email and uncapped a thick marker. Emma wrote, "Not this time," across the page, and underlined it until the paper buckled. People signed underneath in 3 alphabets. A young housekeeper with a tiny moon tattoo added a teacup doodle that looked like a promise you could drink. Teferi leaned close to the glass, covering the light meter. "I can make the lobby warmer," he said. "I can't make them mean it. Write it so they don't get a choice," she said. At 4, an aide from marketing intercepted her near the mezzanine with a hopeful grin. "We could feature you," he said. "Your story is—" "My story is paper," she said. "Walking. Shoot the stipend sheet. Make the font ugly." He laughed like she'd told a joke. Maybe she had. Evening pressed its face to the glass. The lobby learned its nightly glow lamps, softening corners, piano working a standard, until it remembered something true. A junior manager drifted toward a housekeeper's cart and put a hand on the handle, like he owned gravity. Olivia crossed. "Need help?" she asked the housekeeper first. "No," the woman said, shifting the bucket a thumb's width to stop a clank. "I'm good." The manager backed off, palms open. "Just being useful. Best way is to stop right there," Olivia said, and he did a decent impression of a person learning. Upstairs. Legal sent the revised addendum, with track changes bled in the margins like a polite injury. She read every clause until the words stopped moving. She added one line. "Any rollback triggers board vote recorded in minutes. Minutes published to staff bulletin." She CC'd the owner's man, the chair, finance, and without asking permission, marketing. Her phone buzzed. "Ms. Lynn," he asks, "are you winning the argument?" Then another, also, "Sleep." She typed back, "We bought a year. I'll spend it loud." The owner's man replied to the thread with a sentence that could almost be considered respect. Approved. Addendum to be executed tomorrow, 10 a.m. She closed the laptop and let the quiet take the room. The lamp threw a small circle. Dust moved through it like exhausted snow. On the desk, the black card sat under glass. She slid it out, pressed the beveled edge into the soft part of her thumb until she felt the sting argue with the calm. "Make it boring," she said to the empty room. She put the card back and pulled the diploma from the wall. The glass held one fingerprint. She wiped it and slid the degree into a cardboard sleeve marked, "For whoever needs proof." The frame went back on the shelf empty. The emptiness made the room feel honest. She walked the floor one last time. On 10, the partition rolled like it had always known how. In a service corridor, a handwritten sign in 3 languages asked for patience, while a sink learned to drain. Downstairs, the concierge switched to Mandarin before a grandmother finished forming the first syllable. The grandmother's face didn't brighten or soften. It simply stopped bracing. At the exit, she pressed her palm to the revolving door. The glass cooled her skin. It remembered. Outside, the avenue threw neon flags into puddles and dared them to be stars. A bus sighed. Steam rose. The city kept its bargain with anyone willing to walk. Her phone buzzed once more. Ms. Lin again. Tomorrow. 12 Polita words. Practice. Olivia typed a draft. She wouldn't send. Polite wastes time. Paper saves it. See you at 10. She put the phone away. The chandelier above hummed, counting something no spreadsheet could name. 2 degrees of warmth lived in the corners now, invisible to anyone who wasn't paying attention, obvious to everyone who had ever worked under cold light. She stepped into the revolving ring and let it take her weight, her reflection bending and returning, the door closing the day around her like a sentence that finally found its period. The signatures dried like small shadows on the paper, each name a weight that changed how the table sat. Legal slid the addendum into a sleeve, hands neat, breath level. The room smelled of toner and eucalyptus from a cleaning spray someone had used too generously. Outside the glass, the avenue threw a white winter light that made faces look honest by accident. Executed, the chair said, pen tapping once on the leather folder. No speech. No bow. The chandelier above answered with a faint hum. Cold singing at noon. Harrison's chair was empty. His name sat on a tent card, like a place setting for someone committed elsewhere. On the screen, a line from a personnel email sat in the corner, almost shy. To pursue new opportunities, it had gone out 2 Fridays ago. People were already smoothing its edges with anecdotes they preferred. Next item, the chair said, reporting cadence. Olivia passed the packet down the row. Stipends by department. Language coverage grid by hour block. Guest satisfaction. Heat map with cool pockets circled in a sober pen. No adjectives, only the grammar of numbers and the names that gave them spine. Link 10% of management bonus to the grid, the chair said, marking a margin. Public bulletins monthly. Minutes signed. A director cleared his throat. Optics. Functions. She said. Optics comes free. In the glass wall, they were thinned and doubled. 6 people who believed in paper enough to let it change the air. For a beat, no one moved. Steam lifted from a ceramic mug on a side table and made one straight line before disappearing. It broke like this after the lobby stepped into its afternoon with a practiced grace, but something in its shoulders looked relieved. Emma carried a stack of stipend schedules in fresh black ink, the edges aligned by a hand that had done this before, for paychecks that barely mattered. She pinned the sheet to the corkboard beside the time clock. People drifted over as if pulled. Fingers traced numbers the way you trace names on a monument. Real money. A bellman said, low. For real work, Emma said, log it like you expect to be paid. A young front desk higher. Hair buzzed tight. Read the Mandarin line out loud under his breath, and tested the edges of the consonants with his tongue like new teeth. Feels like a passcode, he said, surprised into honesty. Feels like being expected, Juno said, not looking up from her screen. An hour later, the board chair walked the mezzanine alone, heels soft on carpet that swallowed footsteps. She stopped at the glass rail and looked down as if a building were a ledger. Olivia joined her without speaking. They stood a while with the lobby reflected on the inside of the glass, like a second, fainter world. Strange about Harrison, the chair said finally. He kept the lights on in hard winters. He also tried to stage a play without actors. He didn't see the hands. Olivia said, or he saw them and thought they were props. Both can be true. The chair said, we have to hold two sentences at once. Can we? Olivia asked. We have to. The chair said. She didn't smile. Send me your next report without verbs that apologize. The glass recorded them and offered the scene back as proof that it had happened. Below, a housekeeper turned a bucket handle a finger width to stop the clank, a quiet mercy on a floor that echoed too well. By late afternoon, there was cake in the maintenance shop for no reason anyone admitted. The room smelled like hot dust and sugar. Teferi cut slices with a utility knife he'd wiped clean on a rag. The Sharpie scrawled, "Not this time," on the corkboard. Had grown a border of signatures so thick the paper buckled. Someone had taped a second sheet below it, and that one had filled, too. To Emma's kid, someone said, lifting a plastic fork. Night program starts Monday. Emma lifted her shoulder like a shrug and a thank you tangled together. He'll be a tired engineer, she said. Best kind, Teferi said. They fixed the thing that made them tired. Olivia took her plate and stepped aside, letting the hum of small talk do its work on a room that spent most of its hours with machines. She checked her phone. A text from Ms. Lynn. He's pleased. Now, make it boring. She typed back. Already dull. Deliciously dull. Then put the phone face down and let the quiet inhabit the space. Evening pushed the day toward its edges. The lamps in the lobby laid down their warm ellipses. The piano gave up its lonely song halfway through a bridge and started again softer. A junior manager drifted toward a housekeeping cart out of habit, hand hovering. Olivia crossed the marble with steps that didn't rush. Need a hand? She asked the woman behind the cart first. The woman tapped the bucket again, listening, then shook her head. I've got it. The manager let his hand fall. Palms showing. I'm learning, he said, half smile. Not entirely self-defense. Learning sticks when it costs you something, Olivia said, and watched him decide to nod. Upstairs, she found the email Harrison had sent her the week after the first blow-up. The one where the pronoun did all the lying. We delivered it, said, warm as a towel out of a dryer. She read it once and archived it. The trash felt too dramatic. Some things didn't need the satisfaction. By the copier, she ran off a one-page credit ledger and posted it near the corkboard. Names under the month, tasks beside them, small squares to check when the pay landed. No trophies, no framing, just a list that dared to be looked at. Midpoint. A donor with a soft voice and a hard checkbook asked for a tour. He wanted to see the changes. On 10, he reached for a partition and slid it. It ran smooth, then slower at the last inch, the wood catching and then letting go. If you didn't ask it to hurry, he smiled like he'd been let in on a secret. The grandmother sits there, Olivia said, pointing to the chair with the good view. She can see the window while the others sleep. Do grandmothers book this? He asked. They book people, she said. Then the room follows. He looked at the light, at the kettle, at the way the table welcomed a bowl more than a magazine. He wrote a number on a card and slid it across the polished wood. No plaque, he said. Spend it on the square things that make people breathe. The kitchen learned to steam water without drama. Miguel tapped the kettle wall with the back of a spoon, listening for the pitch that meant pause. He burned his thumb and swore once, soft and affectionate. Grandmother T, he said to the two new hires, both watching the stream like it could teach them to see. She's the boss. Does she tip? One asked. Deadpan. She tips with a story later, Miguel said, worth more than $1. Dry humor moved through the corridor like a smile no one needed to see. It made the air less brittle. Night pooled under the chandelier, and the marble drank light like water. In the office, Olivia opened a thin cardboard sleeve and slid a diploma inside. The glass from its frame wiped clean with the edge of her sleeve. She wrote on the outside, with a black marker, "For whoever needs proof." The empty frame, she leaned on a shelf. The emptiness looked right, a place the room could breathe. Her email chimed. A junior manager wrote 2 lines. "I told my mother we pay for language now." She cried. She never got paid for translating our whole lives. She stared at the screen until her eyes stung, and then wrote back, "Bring her tea here." On us. She hit send before she could turn it into a program. Pre-climax quiet. She stood at the mezzanine rail and watched a boy slide in socks across the marble until his mother's hand shot out and caught him by the elbow with practiced tenderness. The boy grinned and stopped. The mother smoothed his hair and kept walking. The chandelier hummed. The lily scent lifted and fell. On her way down, she passed the black card under the paperweight and didn't touch it. She didn't need reminder or threat tonight. She needed habit. She needed bolts doing the unglamorous work of not loosening when no one watched. At the door, she put her palm flat to the glass. It met her cool and certain. The city outside flickered against it in neon and brake lights, and the blue of a sign with a missing bulb. She stepped into the revolving ring, let the door take her weight, watched her reflection bend and return with every quarter turn. The street air held copper and rain. Somewhere, a bus exhaled like an old animal. Her phone buzzed once. "Ms. Lin again. He asks for a line to tell in Singapore." 1 sentence. She typed while walking. "We stopped staging culture and started paying it." Deleted the period. Sent it without. Behind her, the lobby settled. A housekeeper adjusted a bucket handle so it didn't speak when it shouldn't. A payment screen was ready in the right language before anyone asked it to be. 2 degrees of warmth lived in the corners and refused to leave. The chandelier counted something only it knew how to measure, and decided, kindly, to keep counting. Rain pinned the afternoon to the windows in neat, insistent stitches. The revolving door took its time between breaths, and the chandelier hummed its cold song, as if the ceiling were a mouth that never tired. Tea steam made a pale column on the corner table, straight and fragile, the scent clean as riverstone. Jiang set his umbrella in the brass stand and shook a sleeve once. "Precise." Ms. Lin fell in beside him. Watch, still 5 minutes ahead. A superstition that had learned to be right. They didn't ask for a private room. They asked for a kettle and a seat with glass. "Status," he said, voice low enough to respect the room. He set a leather folder down, the corners burnished by a life that touched expensive things like tools. "We wrote it in," Olivia said. "Not forever. For a year." She touched the folder, not opening it yet. Paper that makes a sound if someone tries to tear it. He glanced up at the chandelier like it might have studied law. "Good," he said. "Now make it boring." She smiled because boredom was the prize. It meant the gear turned by itself. It meant no one got to call it a miracle later. He slid a schedule across the table instead of a compliment. "Singapore in March," he said. "Then back here, training there, audit here. Keep the same face." "I'll go," she said, "but I won't move my furniture yet." Ms. Lin's pen made a small, satisfied click. "Arm yourself," she said, "not against villains, against fatigue." Midpoint. The trolley chimed softly, a porcelain lid kissing a cup, an old sound learning a new room. Olivia poured for the 3 of them without ceremony. Handle angle. Le tilt. Pour arc. Steam rose and vanished, the way things do when you get them right. "You're building staff who choose not to flinch," Jiang said, watching the pour more than the person. "I can use that in 3 cities." "Keep the program named after itself," she said. "No legacy nonsense." No family, just language and pay. He nodded, almost amused. Adjectives are for brochures. We brought engineers. They didn't toast, they drank. Outside, a bus exhaled against the curb. A long, forgiving sound. Inside, the room held steady at 2 degrees warmer than last winter, skin stopping short of its old fight with stone. She took him through the shifts, the stipend board pinned beside the time clock, thick with signatures and coffee drips, the inventory list with tea waits and bloom times taped over the kettle, the partition on 10 that slid without complaint, but made a small, honest catch near the end. So you remembered to be gentle. The owner's man had signed the addendum with a pen that clicked too loudly, and the board chair had turned 10% of management bonus into a leash that looked decorative until it pulled. You'll get a summary, she said. Names, not weather. Good. He said, weather lies. They moved slow corridor drift. Lift mirrors, stacking them into an army, and then narrowing to 3 again when the doors opened. On 10, a grandmother sat where the sight line was clean to the window, a boy asleep across 2 pillows, a mother in socks drinking from a cup that steamed the way porcelain ought to. Jiang didn't intrude. He looked, then let the elevator doors erase the view before it hardened into story. Back downstairs, they passed marketing photographing the trolley. The photographer had his lens on hands, not props, and Olivia didn't correct him. Progress, she said under her breath. Progress is hand, Ms. Lin said. Everything else is adjectives. They stopped at the mezzanine rail. The lobby below folded and unfolded people with its usual competence. The lilies were fresh enough to look expensive. The sign at the desk had characters set beside their English twins, fonts married instead of copied, a small domestic piece. A junior manager hesitated near a housekeeping cart, hands empty, learned behavior, settling into muscle. Your year? Jiang asked. Already spending it, she said. On bolts. He set a smaller card next to the teacup. Not black this time, white stock. No bevel. A phone number written in a hand that invited, didn't command. For when bolts aren't enough, he said, we accept systems, we also buy exits. She didn't touch the card. I want to look away from the door for 1 season, she said. See if this place can hold its own weight. He slid the card closer without drama. Then build for when you're not here. That evening, the housekeeping break room smelled like orange cleaner and microwave noodles. A whiteboard held a schedule with new rectangles labeled training in block letters. Emma stood with a marker and a joke face. You're unpaid models, she told the crew. For hands, groans, a few smiles. A woman with nail polish chipped to a constellation said, do we get royalties? Stipends, Emma said, drawing a dollar sign that wasn't cute. And if the camera makes anyone feel like furniture, I break the lens with my attitude. Dry laughter turned the air less brittle. A man who rarely spoke lifted a hand. My Amharic is rusty, he said. But if anyone wants to practice how to say, please stop pretending you know my language, I can help. Put that on a t-shirt, Juno said from the door, carrying a tray of paper cups like a holy thing. They ran the training like blocking a scene without a script, where to stand. So someone approaching the desk sees welcome before policy, when to flip the screen to Mandarin without turning it into a performance. How to say, can I ask what you prefer, without adding apology. Hands learning to rest, not hover. Eyes learning to listen, not patrol. In the kitchen, the kettle whispered. Miguel tapped its side until it sang back the note he trusted. 2 new hires watched his hands like a weather report. Water gets impatient like a person, he said. You are here to forgive it before it boils. "So we're therapists," one said, straight-faced. "Cheaper than mine," Miguel said. "Don't tell HR." Upstairs, the maintenance shop ran a different liturgy. Teferi held a light meter and squinted at the screen. 2 degrees, he said. "We keep saying it, and they think it's a metaphor." "It's a metric," Olivia said. "Metaphors get you plaques. Plaque collect dust," he said. "Dust makes me angry." She pinned a new sign above the workbench. "Report if slip bolts don't loosen in silence." A Sharpie hung on a string below it, ink already warming to its job. Someone underlined, "Don't," and added a small wrench doodle with a grin. Pre-climax quiet arrived, disguised as routine. The lobby warmed into evening. The pianist shifted into a slower standard. The revolving door moved with lazy accuracy. Quarter turn. Breath. Quarter turn. A boy in socks slid across the marble and caught himself on the seam where 2 slabs met. His mother's hand found his hoodie without looking. An old choreography, learning a new stage. Olivia went back to her office and pulled the diploma from its cardboard sleeve, then put it back. She didn't hang it. The empty frame on the shelf kept a space for a thing that didn't need the wall to exist. On the desk, under glass, the black card lay like a small machine she was not going to use today. Beside it, she slid an index card with new ink. "Make it boring. Make it stick." She drafted a note to the board chair. Quarterly outcomes attached. Names included. Slips reported. She attached a photo of the stipend board with coffee circles like ghosts of mornings. She attached a 3-line testimony from a guest who had not been photographed and a 3-digit lift in average check. When T behaved, she did not attach the story about the boy in socks. It was not data. It was the reason. Downstairs, the concierge answered in Mandarin before the sentence needed saving. The grandmother didn't smile. She let her jaw loosen, as if a tooth had stopped throbbing. The manager on duty watched and did not step in to claim the moment for a meeting. Zhang and Ms. Lin left the way they came, with an umbrella and a nod. At the revolving door, Ms. Lin paused and glanced at her watch. 5 minutes ahead, she said, tapping the face. "Still rude?" Olivia asked. "Still right," she said. "Stay mean about the clauses." "Mean keeps the lights on," Olivia said. "Sentiment sells brochures." Ms. Lin said, "Let them sell. You keep the receipts." The rain eased to a glitter. Neon broke into the puddles without shame. The chandelier above counted something that had nothing to do with dollars beats until habit. Maybe. Breaths between mistakes. Its cold music softened by the warmer air. At closing, Olivia stood at the mezzanine rail with her palm flat to the glass. It met her cool, and it remembered, below. A housekeeper adjusted a bucket handle, a finger width to stop a clank that would have traveled. A payment screen waited in the right language, without asking to be thanked. The partition on 10 slid and made its honest catch. The 2 degrees held. She stayed while the lobby emptied, the hum settling into itself. She thought about leaving, really leaving. Door and key and card, and pictured a room that kept its promises without her hand on the pane. She let the picture stand there, unframed, patient. Then she turned from the glass and walked the long way out, past the corkboard with signatures and the wrench doodle and the words that looked like a warning and read like a vow. At the door, she pressed her palm once more to the pane and stepped into the ring. The city took her weight. Her reflection bent, returned, disappeared, returned. Inside, the chandelier kept counting. Outside, the rain stopped, pretending to be anything other than water. The morning glass held the city like a held breath. Down on the avenue, Steam climbed from a manhole in a thin, stubborn column. Inside, lilies sweetened the air over the cool bite of marble, and the chandelier hummed its clean, indifferent note, like a blade kept oiled. A push alert lit the lobby screens before coffee met cups. 3 seconds of audio, hissy and clear. A man's voice, clipped, whispering "fire her." The caption did the rest, names stitched to the sound. The clip ran on phones like a fever. Silence landed fast, heads tilted, then leveled. A bellman lowered his eyes and kept moving. Emma checked the time clock with a hand that didn't shake and went back to her list. It was always going to surface. Juno sat at the desk, voice flat as paper. Rot floats. Olivia read the statement before PR posted it and crossed out the words legacy and values. She left, "We failed to see." She added, "We corrected in public with pay." She sent it back without emojis. The screen reflected her face thinly in the dark edge, a ghost that insisted on work. By 10, the boardroom carried the smell of coffee, toner, rain on coats. The chair sat like a clean line. The owner's man brought a jaw that liked pressure. Marketing waited at the glass with a bandage of talking points they hoped would fit any wound. "We will not platform him," the chair said, opening. "We will not platform denial." "Should we get out in front?" the owner's man asked, meaning microphones. "We get under it," Olivia said. "Bolts, not adjectives. We say what we've done, who got paid, where it hurt." The chandelier hummed on. Steam rose from a mug on a side table and went thin. Then, invisible, a quiet talent for disappearing that no one admired anymore. The day had its other storm waiting. A zoning board hearing at 3. Final vote on the expansion. The clause about cultural exchange that had made 1,000 emails and 24 drafts, and one trip to a planner's office that smelled like dried highlighters and old carpet. "Don't be clever," the chair said, turning pages. "Be true." "True is expensive," the owner's man said, glancing at the grid tying his bonus to language coverage. He almost smiled. "I suppose we can afford it." Midpoint. The glass in the elevator threw them back taller and nicer, and then let them be human again when the doors opened to the street. Rain had given up and left the air soft, edges blurred. The municipal building's lobby smelled like wax and winter coats. A clock on the wall didn't quite agree with anyone's watch. In the hearing room, fluorescent tubes moaned. The board sat behind a wood rail that had been polished by the urge to belong. The chair of the board cleared her throat. The vice chair organized his pens by color and self-importance. A planner with ink on his hand reviewed a packet with a face like reluctant hunger. A competitor's rep navisu, clean haircut, smile that snapped into place, spoke first. "We support the Wellington's investment," he said. "We support culture, which costs nothing. We suggest removing the restrictive clause." The room nodded in that bureaucratic way. "That means, we heard your money." Olivia watched Miss Lynn watch the nods and set her watch 5 minutes further ahead like an omen. "Wellington," the board chair said, tilting her chin. "You have 10. Olivia stood and felt the carpet through the soles of her shoes. "Our project includes a cultural exchange clause," she said. "Not for optics. For function. We attached pay to language. We set hours to training. We named names." She held up the stipend schedule in full, ugly font, black on white, like proof that doesn't perform. "Stories don't move numbers," the vice chair said, trying on cynicism like a jacket. "Numbers move numbers." "Then count with me," she said. "Guest satisfaction among Mandarin surnames. Repeat rates by multi-generational party size. Net revenue where tea behaves. 2 degrees of warmth. The difference between posing and belonging. 2 degrees," he echoed, amused. "Everyone says it like a password. It opens a door." she said. The owner's man shifted, ready to claim the podium and the photo. He moved too soon. We are proud of our family of employees, he began, mouth turning the word family into taffy. We have integrated recognition. Pay, Emma whispered from a bench in the back. Not loud, not quiet either. And recognition, he repeated, catching himself. Into a program we plan to maintain indefinitely. Indefinite isn't a unit, the board chair said. Do you mean a year? A year, Olivia said, executed in public. A quiet beat stretched like a held string. Laughter from another room drifted under the door and died there. The competitor's rep rose again. Umbrellas of regulation are unfair, he said, loving his line. We should not chain operations to vibe, then chain them to paper. Olivia said, we did the math. We made the pay. We let the city breathe without apology. The planner with ink on his hand looked up. Will you publish names tied to the outcomes? He asked, unexpected. Yes, she said, names, not weather. She held up the credit ledger, small squares, check marks only when money landed. The board chair tapped her pen on the dais once and looked at the room the way surgeons look at x-rays. Motion, she asked. Approve with clause intact. Someone said, second. Someone else said, a voice that carried a lifetime of saying yes to the right kind of difficult. The vice chair leaned back, displeased but wary. His pens didn't move. We'll condition on reporting, he said. Double the cadence. Public minutes. Done. Olivia said. She didn't look at the owner's man. She didn't need his face to confirm a contract. The vote carried. 5 hands lifted. 1 hand hovered and fell. The room exhaled like an old animal. Outside, the street offered up a hiss of buses and the damp shuffle of shoes. Pre-climax breath. In the hallway, a reporter with good shoes and a notebook waited. Ms. Thomas, she said, catching Olivia's eye as if it were a ball. Hero of the clip. Clips are short, Olivia said. This took a year. What did you lose? The reporter asked. Quiet. Olivia thought of the black card under glass. She thought of a life that could be easier elsewhere. She thought of the frame she'd left empty on purpose. Privacy, she said, and the part of hope that likes applause. Do you want a quote? The reporter asked. I want this to be boring, she said. Write that. Back at the hotel, the lobby held its breath until it learned not to. People looked at each other, then at the screen, then back to the work. A housekeeper adjusted a bucket handle by a finger width to stop a clank. Juno flipped a screen to Mandarin before a grandmother needed to learn the word for ask. The chandelier counted and kept counting. In her office, the diploma waited in its cardboard sleeve. She wrote a name on it and sealed the flap with tape that fought back. To, Mulatu, she wrote under the printing. For anyone who demands proof. She slid it into a mail bin and didn't watch where it went after. The advisory memorandum sat beside the black card like a neat marriage that no one blessed. She slid an index card under the paperweight where only she would see it. Exit on your terms or don't exit at all. Her email chimed. The chair had seized her on a note to the board. Zoning passed. Clause intact. Reporting doubled. Then, in that clean tone she reserved for respect. We did not stage. We served. Olivia read it twice. Harrison's name trended at noon and sank by 2. His own words had eaten their way out of the walls, chewed through his lawn, and sat on his porch like a dog that refused to run. No one needed to dress him down. He had done it to himself with a microphone and a mirror he liked too much. A junior manager stepped into her doorway and held the frame like it might run. We're okay, he asked, unsure if the shape of the day had a mouth. We're working, she said. That's our version of okay. He hesitated. My mother called me after the clip. said she translated for years and was never paid. Saeed, thanks. Tell her to send an invoice, she said. He laughed, then didn't, then nodded. He left with a look that had learned the word after and trusted it enough to use it. She wrote a letter no one had asked for. Bored, it began. If the clause weakens, if stipends migrate back to recognition, if the committee is emptied, I will resign and publish the minutes you sign. It will make a sound you can't pretend you don't hear. She printed it. She signed it. She placed it in a folder marked, "For when silence is the plan," and locked it in the drawer with a key she wore on a chain that didn't look like one. Evening arrived plain. The pianist tested one note and let it ring. The lamps laid down their warm ovals. Teferi adjusted a sconce until the Kelvin read exact 2 degrees. He murmured, 2 degrees, she said, and the words did not feel like a charm. They felt like a wrench. She took the long walk along the mezzanine. The corkboard held the stipend grid, coffee rings like old moons. The knot this time had grown a border of doodled wrenches and cups and initials that could be read 3 ways. Someone had taped a photocopy of the zoning vote to the edge, highlighter bleeding through like a sun under paper. At the glass, she laid her palm flat, cool met skin. The pain remembered, below. A boy in socks slid once and was caught by a hand that didn't have to look. A grandmother sipped. A manager kept his hands to himself. A screen did its job before anyone had to request it. The partition on 10 made its honest catch and then let go. She stood until the hum of the chandelier slowed by a fraction, which might have been her ears learning a new tempo. The black card sat under glass back in the office, bevel bright at the edge, patient as a door that opens if you push, closes if you don't. She wasn't ready. She would be, someday. Or not. The system had to stand, even if she didn't. She went down. At the revolving door, she pressed her palm one last time to the pane. The city leaned close on the other side. Neon broken into puddles, bus brakes breathing, a man laughing into a phone like the sky had just forgiven him. She stepped into the ring and let it take her weight. The door turned. Her reflection bent, returned, disappeared, returned. Outside, the air was the right kind of cold, the kind that taught lungs how to measure, the kind that asked nothing and noticed everything. Inside, the chandelier kept counting, not dollars, not apologies. The beats between when a rule is written and when it becomes habit, the space where a hand learns to rest and a room learns to breathe, the distance 2 degrees, no more, no less between staged warmth and the kind that stays when no one is looking.